Hi, I'm Preston Williams, and welcome to another edition of Jazz Talk. Today on our show, we have with us a very special guest who needs no introduction. I consider him to be a jazz icon. He's been on the scene for over 60 years and has worked with many greats from Eric Dolphy, Charles Mingus, Freddie Hubbard, Chick Corea, Miles Davis, and Max Roach, to name a few. He is a multi-instrumentalist, composer, and educator. Please welcome to Jazz Talk, Mr. Joe Chambers. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good, man. You look great, and I'm so glad to have you on. Joe, as I was, just sharing some of those names that of people that you've played with and worked with throughout your illustrious career. I'm curious to know more about your humble beginnings, your background. I understand that you are from Chester, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about your humble beginnings, your upbringing, how you got involved in music, sir.
Well, Chester, it's a satellite of Philadelphia,
Yeah.
and I would say I had a musical family. We all played instruments, and sister who danced, and so we were all in that. And one thing about coming up at that time, which would be, I would say, late 40s,
Mm-hmm.
school age, into 50s.
Yeah.
Chester, as I suppose maybe many communities and cities at that time, was very, let's say, artistic minded.
Mm-hmm.
More than I would say today. We had a program, and I was in school,
Mm-hmm.
and it was called Rent an Instrument.
Rent an instrument. Okay.
Yeah, that is to say that instruments were made available. A lot of people couldn't afford instruments. Instruments were made available on a rental basis
Mm-hmm.
from grade school on up through middle school.
Yeah.
At very inexpensive, and every little kid, everybody was running around with instruments. And of course, we had instruments too, and clarinet, and my brother, and of course me, the drums, and I had a other brother who played trumpet, and so we were, we had the instruments.
Mm-hmm.
So we had the lessons. The lessons were made available, and everybody was running around playing. And most people, didn't stick with it, but we did. So that was the environment, and I remember starting off in private lessons as early as 4 and 5, at least 5 years old, first grade, 6, right on up.
Wow.
Yeah, it was that early, and we had a teacher, Mr. Franklin Wilson, great teacher, and he was, and more or less, we were like a farm system in elementary school,
Mm-hmm.
preparing for the middle school, which he also controlled, and then right into high school. It was like a kind of like you look at it like a farm system. They were all connected, and he prepared us for elementary, at an elementary that was preparing for middle school, junior high, and then the junior high was preparing for the high school.
Right.
And it was like that, and it all connected in a
Mm.
way. So the program was, when I think and look at today, of course things change, today, that it was really extraordinary program for that time. I'm suspecting that, I can't say for sure, I'm suspecting that a lot of communities were like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think. And
Okay.
because when you compare it to today, when you look at high schools, middle school, high schools in cities and suburbs today, it's out. The music is out.
Mm.
Music is I would say was been supplanted by maybe the scientific community approach And that was a very of course I say that is what caused the hip hop era.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
the diminished proportion of music education in schools in the big
Yeah.
cities like New York, Philadelphia, and the diminished presence there, uh, which I say is a great, uh, I would say an addendum to the to hip
Mm,
hop, the hip hop era. Of course, the era of hip hop that we know, which is the late '70s and all that. Of course, hip hop is not really old. It's not really new. You know, if we want to get into it, hip hop goes way back. But that's one thing. And so the program was good, and we had good teachers. And I had the fortune to go to Chester High School, which was a
yeah.
advanced high school in the '50s.
Mm,
Very advanced for the time and the place. We had what could be considered a freshman. I was learning theory 1 and 2 in high school. Theory
I
one,
see.
orchestration in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Orchestration, sight reading, score reading, and there was a fellow I grew up with, Richard Rahm. He wasn't even. I found out later he really wasn't from Chester. He was from a place called Darby, which is outside of Philadelphia. And he said his parents and he transferred to Chester High School for the courses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was an excellent. He's now he's in the Toronto Symphony.
Mm.
I talked to him not too long ago, and he said that yeah, I wasn't from Chester. I was from Darby, and I went there because of the courses. So
Yeah.
that was the environment.
So
And
I was going to ask you, Mr. Chambers, after high school, you attended for a year, I believe, the Philadelphia Conservatory.
right, yeah. The thing is that I was learning. Of course, I had people like Marcus Belgrave, the late Marcus Belgrave.
Mm, yeah.
You know about him, a trumpet player,
Oh,
great
yeah. I
trumpet
know
player.
him.
And he had a family. His father was teaching everybody in the neighborhood. And so I was learning about jazz. I didn't really, I came up as any other kid. I was playing in the school bands. We had school orchestra, marching, and even had like a jazz dance orchestra.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I didn't know about people like Max Roach, Clifford Brown, Miles. I had vaguely had, but he had a younger brother took me to his house and they played
Mhm.
those records. And I said, that was like a, revelation. I said, well, this stuff sounds like something from Mars.
Yeah. Yeah. Opened you up, huh?
Yeah. And I immediately jumped into that,
Yeah.
was introduced to that, to those people.
So you, as I said, you were at the conservatory for a year, and as you're, I
Yeah.
guess, honing your skills, and you spent some time in D.C. too, in your
Yeah. Well, I
mid-teens.
went to move to DC, right after I got out of high school.
Yeah. So you were gigging with different musicians around DC at that time.
Yeah, I moved. Well, what happened was I got with the R&B act musician Bobby Charles.
Mm-hmm.
You remember Bobby Charles? He had the tossing and turning. You remember that? You old enough for that? You don't know.
I'm old enough. I'm in my mid-50s, so I know. Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
So I went out on the road and took some gigs when I got out of high school. Landed in D.C. and
Mm.
I liked D.C.
Yeah.
I liked it. So I said, well, I'm gonna hang around here for a while, which I did, and I hooked up with a group called JFK Quintet. That was Andy White, who's still around. Andy had a stroke. The late Walter Booker, Ray
Mm-hmm.
Partington, and Harry Kilgo, myself. And we had a job at the Caverns, place called Bohemian Caverns.
Oh yeah, they just closed
Yeah,
several years back. Yeah. Oh, the famous
we were
place. Yeah.
there. We were there for 3 years. 3 years, 6 nights a week, 3 years. And in fact, that's how you, in those days, even when I moved to New York, when you got a job in a club, you were there for like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
My first job in New York in '63 was Eric Dolphy. Of course, I worked with him.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. How'd you hook up with Eric Dolphy, Joe?
Eric came to D.C. He came in August of '63. And because Andy White had gotten a scholarship to go up to, what was that, Eric Linsdorf up in Tanglewood to do classical, kind of a classical workshop. And so Erica came through earlier, and they came around, set in. And so so Tony, was it Tony Taylor? It was the manager. He called Eric to come down to do. How many weeks do we do? Maybe I think it was 3. And that was the hookup there. He came and worked with us, and we worked with minus Andy White. And
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. You know, and the interesting thing is, Joe, that you caught him, I guess, the year before he passed, because he passed in '64. He wasn't around that long, but boy, he was definitely someone special. Now, I wanted to ask you something right around that time, I guess a little before. You know, Eric had played with different people, and he was also playing with John Coltrane. Coltrane liked him. And something very interesting that you said that caught my, just made me stop and think. You talked about the power of that band with, you know, Elvin, McCoy, John, and Jimmy Garrison. And most people thought that Elvin was driving the band, but you said no, McCoy Tyner was the one that was pushing that band rhythmically. Tell us about that, man. What did you mean by that?
There's a fly running
Okay.
around. Keep me swatting. Anyway, you know, when you talk about, I would give you a little background, you know, of course, the group we had, I don't think anybody really learns really the inside until they go to New York and hook up with those people. We had a group, we had a group in DC 3 years, and that's 3 years. So that means you have to change your program. Your program has to keep growing. We were bringing in arrangements. Andy was writing, I was writing, Booker was writing, Ray. We had to, from week to week, because we're in one place and people are coming in. So so we were doing that. And we had a very good presentation and very but as far as what they call bashing, swinging, we really didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
We didn't have a clue. I know I didn't have a clue because we weren't playing like that. So when I moved, of course, my first job in New York was with Eric Dolphy, and he assembled a group consisting of himself, Freddie Hubbard, Richard Davis, and Bobby Hutcherson.
Ooh,
and we did a concert. Yeah, we did a concert at BAM, Brooklyn Academy of Music, which was recorded. And people are looking for that recording to this day. But anyway, so Eric was a revelation in many ways, and so let me get to McCoy Tyner, and because I worked with McCoy.
Tender moments.
Yeah, and of course I did write the record, and when I worked with him, which had to be 65, somewhere in there, 66, and played a couple trio gigs. It was I don't know, epiphany or revelation. It was something else. It was like, I never played or worked with anybody with that much drive and intensity. So it's, people talk about swing and you know, all these things. And one thing you hear a lot with in an academic situation, time, keeping time. I'm not gonna get there. First of all, you don't play time.
Right.
We don't play time. Nobody plays time. You play pulse.
Okay. Okay.
There's a difference between pulse and time.
I got you. Okay.
And oh, I can illustrate. Just give me a second.
Sure, take your time. That'd be great.
Yeah. All right, I'm back. See, there's a difference. Time, you see what time is, where I'm holding the rubber band.
Yeah.
But pulse, this is pulse.
I got you.
See, this is pulse.
Mm.
So we play pulse. We don't play time. So you can either be up away ahead of the time, or you can be behind. You can be in the middle, and that's something that I say you really can't verbalize swing. You can't verbalize swing. Just as the Latins say clave.
Yeah.
Clave, you talk about clave.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about swing, but you don't verbalize swing. So I learned pulse. I learned what pulse was when I played with McCoy Tyner. So when I just, it was a revelation, an epiphany, whatever you want to call it. And I would say this, McCoy Tyner, in his heyday, when in his prime, in his time, he was stronger than any drummer.
Wow, that's incredible.
Stronger than any drummer. He was strong.
You know, and it's so funny you said that, Joe. Wow.
And he, what I meant, and the Coltrane group, you know, they played music, varied music. They played varied tempos. They played moods, but everybody associates the driving with Elvin Jones.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm here to tell you, and of course we know what Elvin Jones is. It was McCoy Tyner.
McCoy Tyner
was driving that band. It was
wow.
Tyner that was pulling. He was driving Elvin. He was driving Elvin. And did you
catch that band a lot?
Yeah, I saw them live. Yeah, I used that, talk to that to a lot of people. Or you heard the records, and you didn't. Did you see them live? A lot of younger people. And then so I saw them live, and it was McCoy Tyner who was driving that band.
Incredible. You just made me think of something. Freddie Hubbard, the late Freddie Hubbard, I have an interview with he and McCoy Tyner. And this reporter asked, he says, you know, Freddie, you played with great pianists like McCoy Tyner and Herbie Hancock. He said, what's the difference between those guys? He said, oh, Herbie's great, you know, plays synthesizers. He said, but when it comes to the natural thing, he says, McCoy Tyner is my man. Playing with McCoy Tyner is like playing with 3 piano players.
Yep.
I was like, wow, you know. And but yeah, just the sound that you got. But I'm interested, how did you get involved with Blue Note Records? How did you hook up with Blue Note, Mr. Chambers?
Yeah, I talked to people, asked me that a lot, and I said, well, it was okay that I also met, you know, Bobby Hutcherson was on that concert, that big concert that he assembled, that Eric assembled at BAM. So it was, Bobby was actually, yeah, Bobby and Freddie. And see, Freddie was also, I include Freddie Hubbard, because actually that's the first steady work that I got. He started his band, and right after that concert we did, and Freddie was like McCoy in a way. Freddie was he was a hard driver. He was out of the hard school, the hard school of trumpet playing.
Yeah.
Clifford Brown, Freddie, who was Roy Eldridge, Clifford Brown, he was in that Dizzy. He was in out of that mode. He was out of that mode, and he was a hard swinger also. So I learned how to swing with Freddie. And when you work with those people, then you know you figure it's. I'm not gonna get too thingy. You know, one thing on the inside with musicians we talk about. Man, on top, you gotta get on top of the beat. You gotta get on the top of the beat. Then you get, you can be behind the beat or right on it. But you want to be on top of the beat I didn't have an understanding of that until I worked with those people. Freddie, of course, and then McCoy, Freddie too, learned how to be up on top of the beat.
Yeah.
And people, yeah, that's an inside thing. I mean, that's the musicians who play that, they understand that. And a lot of people don't. I'll say one thing Miles has said one time in an interview somewhere, he said, well, you know, white musicians play behind the beat.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard him say that too. He says, I don't know why. He says, but they do, you know. Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's the inside thing. And and you have to know. A lot of people don't even know what is he talking about, but that is a true thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the true thing. And then though you get the musicians who, well, let's jump to Chick Corea. The thing about Chick Corea, I always tell people, is Chick Corea went uptown. Chick went uptown. Chick played with Latin bands. He played with a lot of Latin bands, Willie Bobo, and then he played with Miles. So Chick knows how to be up on top of the beat.
Yeah, yeah. You were on his first recording too, Tones for Jones Bones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Chick know how to do that, but a lot of, I don't like to put it in terms of race. It could be just culture, maybe what we're talking about. He understood the culture, and but it is true that most only the players, Caucasian players who spend time in the culture, really know how to get into that thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're going to be just what Miles said, and it's just it's just the way it is. And so, but if you spend time in the culture, and a guy like Chick, and there's a few others I can't think right now, a guy like Chick, then because he played Latin too, he played Latin, and so he knew where the beat was. I recently played with him 3-4 years ago down in at this composers thing, and we play, and I said, wow, and because I hadn't played with him in a while, but he was right there. He was right there on top of the beat, the way we play.
Right.
And so that's a thing, though. That's an inside thing.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, Joe, what type of people were Alfred Lion and Francis Wolff? You know, you being on the Blue Note label, because they seem to love jazz.
Well, the thing with Alfred Lyons and Frank Wolff, as far as I know, they were German Jews. They were German Jews, and they really liked blues. They like well, they were endeared to African American black musicians. And they liked the blues. That was their initial thing, was blues oriented. And their first recordings were Albert Ammons,
Mead Lux Lewis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They that's where they were, you know. And so I would say could say since the 40s, they started actually started in 39. And I would have to think about this, but I think every major African American musician recorded them.
Without question. I was just looking through that too. You know, you talk about Horace Silver, Bud Powell, Thelonious Monk, Bird was on it, Miles was on it. You know, everyone. You can Herbie, Chick, McCoy. Everybody's been on Blue Note. You know, you're absolutely right. And he captured all of these guys. I think when a lot of them were in their primes. You know,
right. So that was the thing. The other thing, and about them, and I just kind of came to this revelation kind of late. What was, and that the fact is that they didn't really care what you played, as long as you see they were in the right in the 30s. In the 30s, I can't say what the jukeboxing did, but the jukebox industry was very prominent in the 50s, probably the 40s, and the 50s, definitely, and early 60s. They didn't care what you played as long as they could pull something out of the program they could put on the jukebox.
Yeah.
You see, the jukebox industry, which was controlled by the mob, and the mob liked jazz. You know, they like jazz. They're going from way back. They made sure when I was coming up as a teenager in the 50s, we'd sit around, the jukeboxes were everywhere. There, every bar, every restaurant, every little had a jukebox. And they had the small ones on the table, had the big one, you know, big one, and then the little ones. And those jukeboxes were filled with jazz. They were filled with the latest R&B hits, but they had jazz all over the place. Everybody, Miles, Train, Horace. And so when he would say, if I'll give you an example, remember an album recorded by Cannonball called Something Else?
Oh, I have that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a great one. Miles is on that one too. Yeah. Autumn Leaves. Yeah, I love that.
Remember, and there's a tune called One for Daddy-O. And just before it comes on, Miles says, well, this is for you, Rudy. And it's on the record, you know, and I heard it. I didn't know what he meant. What he meant was, this is the one that should go on the jukebox. One for Daddy-O, which was a bluesy kind of thing.
Yeah,
this is for you, Rudy. And I didn't know that at that time, but that is what he was saying. This is the one that goes on the jukebox. And that's where they didn't care what you played, as long as you had something they could put on the jukebox.
Yeah.
Even though like Way Out records I was on with Wayne Shorter.
Oh, I was about to ask you about him, man. I mean, like I said, you played with everybody, and one of my favorites is that one. I believe one it's called "Etc." and the All Seeing Eye. Woo! You actually signed those for me too when you were in Baltimore last year. Yeah, Wayne is just a brilliant composer, just incredible. I love your stuff with him, along with Bobby Hutcherson. Another pianist that I love, he's sort of almost avant-garde, is Andrew Hill. That guy was a genius too, but he doesn't get the same type of notoriety as some of the other guys, almost like Herbie Nichols, who was like overshadowed by Monk and those guys. But what was it like working with Andrew Hill, Mr. Chambers?
He was very, I would say, and what I'm saying in terms of the jukebox, and Andrew Hill he didn't put out anything that could be put on the jukebox.
Right.
And I think about him, of all of it, I can't remember anything that could be put on the jukebox. So that would be one reason why he wasn't as notable, because he, of all the records he made, they were adventurous and very what we call avant-garde, very abstract, and he never did anything, and he probably wasn't feeling it. And he's fortunate that they let him get away with that. But he didn't play any jukebox stuff. Andy Hill was adventures, I would say he was like Eric Dolphy,
Yeah.
analogous to Eric Dolphy from the piano point of view. And but he didn't his writing style and his way of playing too didn't have that drive. It wasn't driving like McCoy Tyner, of course.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, Joe, you played with all the best. I'm thinking Freddie Hubbard. Did you play with Lee Morgan too?
Oh yeah, well
Yeah.
Lee,
Another
Lee
great
was,
trumpeter.
yeah, Lee was on all of those dates with he was on the Joe Henderson dates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
you're the drum? Are you the drummer on Mode for Joe?
Yep.
Man, that's my favorite recording by Joe Henderson. Joe was another great one. So many fantastic artists.
Oh, yeah.
Another great saxophonist. I'm not sure if you played with. Did you ever play with Hank Mobley?
Yep.
Oh wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
We didn't
Another,
record him, but yeah, I played with Hank and Lee. Lee was on a lot of those dates.
yeah.
He was on a date with McCoy and on a date with Joe. Joe Henderson. Well, I say that the two heir apparent saxophone players after Coltrane and Sonny Rollins
Yes.
was Joe Henderson and Wayne Shorter.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I say. Joe was as for me, he was just as good a writer, just as good as a writer as Wayne, uh, and just as good or even better than not better, but as Wayne Shorter.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is, there was something when I was coming up. We used to play R&B and playing bars and stuff, horseshoe bars. There was something called walking the bar. You know anything about that?
I'm familiar with that term. I've heard it before. Yeah.
Well, what that is like dudes. Oh, going back to the house rock tenors like Red Price Sock, Illinois Jacket,
Yeah. I know those cats.
house rock, and they would walk the bar. You either get on the bar or walk around the bar,
Right.
playing, and just rocking the house.
Yeah.
Joe had a sound. Joe sounded like he played, like he walked the bar.
Mm.
Wayne didn't sound like he walked the bar. That's not any. It's not a detriment, but Joe Henderson sounded like those house. He had to sound like those house rock tenors,
Yeah.
the lower register.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He sounded like he walked the bar at one time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I bet you Wayne never walked the bar.
Right.
I'm sure Wayne never walked the bar.
Right. Right. Interesting.
Yeah, that's not it's not a detriment, but it's just Joe had that sound. He had that with the soul, sound and that
Yes, he did.
rock house sound.
Yeah,
And
he sure did.
but he was just, to me, you could put him right up there intellectually as a
Yeah.
composer and player. As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't know. One time, it was the late 60s, 67, 68, around that, Miles had both of them in the band.
I remember. I know about that. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And this is I think this is like after George Coleman
Oh,
was
yeah, this is
yeah.
after George
Yeah.
Coleman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
George, too, is he's in that hierarchy, but George wasn't writing. He wasn't writing like Joe Henderson or Wayne. He wasn't
Right.
writing music like them, but he was equally as an intelligent player. But those dudes, they were writing. With Joe Henderson and Wayne,
Yeah.
they were composing, and of course, so yeah, that's what that was.
Now, Joe, I was going to ask you. You hooked up with Miles Davis as well. I think right around the time mid '60s when he was doing like In a Silent Way, sort of
Yeah,
like some of those sessions. What
yeah.
was it like? What was it like working with Miles, man?
uh, well, I did one of the sessions. I think they put it out in the complete silent way.
Exactly. Yeah.
I did one of those sessions, and you know, Miles had always said, really like Wayne was like, I don't know if he was like trying to act like Miles. or trying to. He was influenced by Miles. He was influenced by Miles.
Yeah.
Miles was, he was like, this is one thing I always said about Miles and people. He was a nice person. He was a nice person, very generous. He gave me a set of symbols back there on that, and I still have them to this very day.
Mm.
But Miles is what we used to call a jitterbug. I don't know if you know what that term is.
You're gonna have to explain it to me, Mr. Chambers. Educate me.
A jitterbug is like, yeah.
Oh, I got you. Okay. I got you.
Like a jitterbug, what we used to call a jitterbug.
Yeah.
Especially coming, like a tough guy, a fake tough guy, that
Right,
guy
right.
walk, especially out of Philly, coming out of Philadelphia and other cities, but the dudes walk,
Yeah.
I don't know somewhat like what these hip hop dudes do today, but yeah, and we used to call them jitterbugs, So he's like, just watch out, this dude,
Right.
think he can fight, a little bit.
Right, right.
So yeah, but yeah, he was. No, he was the type of dude, just like, he wasn't doing a lot of, he wasn't doing a lot of talking on the session. And, you'd have to like pick it up right there. I remember I was on the session, I had never seen the music or nothing. I had to get right into it right then and there, boom. And I remember one session, I wasn't that happy with what I was doing. One of the songs, but one of the other songs was cool. We did the Joe Zawinul song, and but it wasn't like a lot of talking. It was like, you had to use your ear instincts and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Now I was going to ask you, Mr. Chambers, you being a multi-instrumentalist and a fantastic drummer, when did you start playing vibraphone and piano? Was that something early on, or did?
I always played piano. I played piano very early on.
Okay.
In fact, I started lessons on piano as a kid.
Gotcha.
I couldn't keep up with the lessons, but I had always was playing at the piano.
Right.
And that's from the time old junior high school right on up, and then when I went to high school and when I went to the conservatory, I really started practicing. You got to play piano too when you go to music school. So I was practicing. Now I had theoretical knowledge, and to this day, I have I did a piano record. I did a solo piano record. I have a little. It's really like what you call arranger's piano.
Mm-hmm.
Every good musician can play some piano.
Yeah.
Believe me, everyone. And so that's what it is. And I may play a little more, and I may have a little. I wouldn't go out and campaign as a pianist.
Right.
I don't have that kind of skill, but I have enough and then I have enough chordal knowledge. So I was doing that, and that's why I could write and stuff like that. I've always been interested in that because I had my brother was a so-called serious composer with the classical in the modern classical era, and I had studied all that. I studied that too, and I'm still interested in that. And that is something that I'm using today. And now I'm featuring myself as a mallet player.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As a mallet player.
Yeah.
And
you're to a point now. I think I read somewhere where you're like, you don't really want to accompany anyone anymore as a drummer. That's not what you want to do anymore.
Absolutely. That's right. That's right. I don't sit down. I don't play more drums with anybody. I haven't played with everybody, but I absolutely do not want to play drums behind just about, I would say, anybody. The people that I would want to play with, they are all gone.
They're all gone. Yeah. And like you said, you've played with everybody. I mean, your resume is just unbelievable. You'll never have a group of musicians of that caliber around again, you know, and it's just incredible. But I'm fascinated, you know, moving into the 70s, man, you hooked up with Charles Mingus. What was it like playing with Mingus, man?
Mingus was, Mingus was, he was more of a, he actually at that point, he didn't really want to be playing himself. He's a composer. He was a composer.
Brilliant composer.
Yeah. And he would play some, but he wasn't really into playing the bass, you know, with the band. In fact, he would get other bass players to play. And then stuff. So that's where he was. I look at him and the way he conducted in the work we did, Vanguard, and did some concerts, but he was like a composer. Really a composer conductor, and that he would do things. He wasn't interested in you know, getting a groove done. No. So I'm saying that, I mean, he would have somebody else there to do that. So he wasn't trying to play bass at the time. He was a composer and arranger at that point. But he was very, you know, man, he's a very called demonstrative, he's very political minded, very
the stuff that he was writing, especially back in the 60s, definitely, you know, showed that. And he did a great recording on Blue Note with Max Roach and Duke Ellington called Money Jungle. Which was fantastic. But you had your time with him. But I'm interested in you hooking up with Max Roach, man, with M Boom. Tell me about that, because Max is like another hero of mine.
Well, right. Well, see, Max is the same thing. I always say when I do interviews, clinics and stuff, I was always trying to be like Max Roach, but I wanted to sound like Philly and Elvin.
Like Joe Jones, yeah.
Philly and Elvin. That's who I was trying to sound like, but I always was trying to be like Max.
Yeah.
And that is, Max is the perfect mentor to teach a drummer or percussionist how to be in the business. That's the perfect mentor right there.
Yeah.
And he was doing things like all those other drummers, like I said, I wanted to sound like Philly, and he would sound like Elvin, and of course Roy Haynes, and then Tony Williams later.
Yeah.
He was doing things like work with choruses, orchestras, full orchestras, string quartets, theater things. Max was a theater man. He liked to do musical theater. And of course, he started the Boom. Now, the Boom, as we found out, as a matter of fact, when he called me, and then he called, you know, the other people, I thought that there was something they call the Rise and Fly. Rise and Fly is historically goes, well, definitely Africa, but let's take the New World, America. It goes back, probably went back, it's like 4 to 5 great top drummers on the stage, boom. And they have a backup band, 4 to 5 piece band. Each drummer has a time with the band, and then they come together in the end with a big comics. And that was something that used to take place, and probably took place way back, but I saw it when they used to do something called Gretsch Night in Birdland. And that would be the lineup. And so he also went overseas with that lineup. 4 or 5 top drummers. Look, he would have Art Blakey himself, Philly sometimes, and then he would make sure he would have somebody like Shelly Manne
or Buddy Rich.
Yeah. In fact, they did a record together.
Yeah, I know.
And so that would be the lineup, and then they'd get a band, and they would do that at Birdland or definitely a big club like the old Birdland, and they'd get a 4 or 5 piece band backup, couple horns, rhythms, and then they would go down just like that. Each one of them would individually play with that band, and then they would, as for a climax, they would all get up there on the stage together.
Wow.
And so that's what I thought we were going to do. But he said, no, I don't want to do that no more. He wanted to explore percussion.
Yeah.
Explore percussion. Now, percussion that is another story.
Mm-hmm.
The percussion family of instruments has the widest range of timbre than any range of any family in a symphony orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
Wide ranged in brass, strings, we got strings, brass, woodwinds. It has a wider range. What I mean by that, from the smallest timbre of sound to the biggest sound that you can possibly get. So you're talking about a range of a wide range of instruments, idiophonics, that is the shakers and all of that. And you got tune, you got marimbas, vibes, and these are sound producing. You got the timpani, you got the drum set. It is huge, the sound possibilities. So we had to get together and just learn how to do that. We had to learn to play those instruments. We started in 1970. We would rehearse every Saturday, and just trying to get to learn. We had to learn instruments. That's when I started to play the mallets. But it was easy.
Okay.
It was easy for me because I already knew the keyboard. I knew the keyboard because I was playing piano. So it wasn't that difficult to go to the mallets.
Right. Yeah. You guys played some really, really great stuff, man. Like I said, I loved different incarnations of that group. You also played with Sonny Rollins too, man.
Yeah.
What was it like playing with Nuke?
Well, yeah, Nuke that's another dude. I did a couple nights with him at the Vanguard one night. That was the time when he was changing rhythm sections every night.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Nuke, that's a funny dude, boy. That's one of the funniest cats in the business.
Yeah.
But I really played a couple nights with Nuke.
Wow.
I wish I could have played a little longer, but
Yeah.
we just didn't work out. The group that we had wasn't a good gelling. Didn't gel that well.
Yeah, I got you. You also played with the late Chet Baker as well, man. What was that like?
Oh, well, that was cool. We did recording. We did a couple. Chet was cool. He was a great player. He was pretty much like that, like I described him, but he didn't have too much drive in him. He wasn't driving, nothing like that. But he had good time, good feeling, and a little soft, a little.
Yeah.
We did a record, I think that was it, and Chet. Yeah, Chet was one of the cats,
Yeah. He is an interesting guy. Now, one of the things I was going to ask you about as a composer, I think you're a brilliant composer. Even if you didn't play anymore, you could just write. And one of my favorite recordings by you, Mirrors, man. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, and it's a story behind that. But that was a piece that I wrote when I was in D.C.
Okay.
Just before I went there, wrote it in a class. I was studying composition, classical composition, what I call Euro art music, really. And so I wrote it a piece called Mirrors. There's a style of writing called mirror writing. Yeah.
Okay.
That juxtaposes and themes and turn things. So that was written for that class.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So the thing about that was that, when I moved to New York, And then I did that concert with Eric Dolphy, the big, but he immediately he had a deal, record deal with Blue Note, and he went to Out to Lunch. Remember that?
Out to Lunch is a
Yeah.
favorite of mine. That's a great
He
recording,
invited
man.
he invited me, and Tony Williams is the drummer on that.
Tony was the drummer. That's
He
right.
invited me to the rehearsal. He told me to come to the rehearsal and bring music. What he was doing was setting me up. He was setting me up. And it
Okay.
was no big deal. I came and brought mirrors and Freddie liked it. Freddie liked it. He said, "Yeah, yeah, I want to play this." And he was setting me up with them, with Alfred. I didn't know the difference. I brought it, just brought the tune, boom. And I remember Tony he was in awe because he wasn't really writing at that time.
Right.
He wasn't writing no music. Nobody,
Young Tony
no
Williams.
drummer was writing it, maybe except Max Roach. So I remember he was in awe. So that's the story behind. And then when I was doing all those sessions with Blue Note,
Hmm.
they asked me somewhere in that they asked me to sit down with them, and I was so spaced I was content to just be doing playing in the sideman role, and I didn't even follow up on it.
Yo, I'm telling you, I think you may be the most recorded drummer on Blue Note, especially during that time period, like 64 through like 68 or 69. I'm
Mhm.
telling you, you're on everybody's record, man.
Yeah,
And that was such a beautiful time for jazz. I
yeah.
also remember seeing you in 1996. You were in that documentary Blue Note: A Story of Modern Jazz. Saw you on there with Ron Carter and the
Oh,
late Bobby Hutcherson. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, we were over in Europe. Yeah, I said I must have said I don't know what I said, but what they might have edited out, you know. But yeah, that's it. They would have to Blue Note today is the president of Blue Note. Don was
Yeah, Don.
Don. Uh, he's a musician also, and he's very much into the legacy. And if you look at it, I am the only one
You
really
are.
today. Everybody's dead. Look at
Yeah. I think Jack DeJohnette did a little bit. I don't think he hardly did anything on Blue Note, but you pretty much, yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Yeah, because Tony is not here. Elvin, yeah, you are pretty much the only one left. And
Max,
so much.
Philly, Billy Higgins, everybody's checked out,
Yeah, man, just an incredible period. Now, I wanted to ask you, you did something recently, about a year or two ago. You were at the Atlas in Washington, D.C. You seemed to like that place. And you had this, I think, 17-piece big band, man. Yeah,
It's a local big band. There was
yeah. They were doing your music, right?
right, yeah. And the dude who ran that, Brad Lynn,
Mm-hmm.
like his band, they were local, all locals, DC. And
Yeah,
I did something really recent last October at
yeah.
The Kennedy Center with that band.
Mm.
And it was talk of trying to record that actually, but there was too much. It was too much overhead, too much. But that's my next thought is to do orchestra with the percussion.
I would love to hear that, man. I
Percussion.
would love to
Yeah.
hear that, because like I said, just your writing, I'm very, very impressed with your writing. You remind me a lot of Jack DeJohnette, where you guys are drummer, composers, and piano players too, you know.
What Jack is there? He's in there. Yeah, he's.
You guys are the same age too, I think. Yeah,
I was in New York though before Jack.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You came a little later. Now, I wanted to ask you, when you're at home, just relaxing, maybe when you're with your wife, Joe, what are you listening to? What type of artists or music are you listening to when you're just home relaxing? Do you put on like the old classics? Are you listening to current stuff, or you just sort of focused on your own thing, writing?
Well, yeah, yeah. After a while, you just focus on your own thing. But I still have records that I like. Over the years, the favorite records.
Hmm.
And I don't, listen. I think you get to a point. I don't listen the way I used to listen.
Right.
And, I know what's going on though. Of course, I hear the hip hop and all of this stuff and R&B. But I will say that just for the more current trends, I really don't like the beats.
I got you. Gotcha.
You know, the beats,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
they call the beats.
Right, right.
I don't like the beats. The beats are really like something that somebody 10 or 9, 8 years old would play. It's really, I call it, as far as the drums, the kit, it's taking the kit back 400 years.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. There's nothing like having like a real drummer. I always say the drummer and the bass player are the two most important people, in a band. But I wanted to also ask you about. You're also an educator too, man, and you taught. You're like a professor or something like that at the
Yeah.
University of North Carolina, Wilmington. Tell us about that.
Well, they had have you ever taught at a college or university before?
No.
Mhm. Well, it is, they were looking for something what they call a distinguished. Well, the story I got was they were going to either go classical or jazz. So the not the dean, but a guy who's the money, Keenan, Tom Keenan. He's the money
Yeah,
around
yeah.
North Carolina. He wanted to do jazz, so they were going to do distinguished professor of jazz. It was going to look. So I heard about it. Some guy when I was in New York, and I heard it. So I sent it. I said, let me see what this is. I applied for it, and they got me. They got me down here, and they liked me. Because I had a lot of knowledge too. I had
Hmm.
all the keyboard knowledge and could play mallets and stuff, and knew how to write and compose. So they said, all right, yeah. So I got in here. But it's different when you work with a college university. You got to adhere to a lot of. There's a lot of politics. Well, not politics, anything. You have to uh, 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 let's say you have to compromise your attitudes, the way you're doing it. That's all. You're under scope too. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
so, I lasted 4 years, and that was that.
Yeah.
I would say the only thing I miss about that job is a check every week, every month. So,
I hear you, man. I hear you. Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever considered, because a lot of musicians, since the COVID-19 has hit, they're teaching courses online. I've had, many musicians, drummers, guitar players, and is that something you'd be interested in
well,
doing?
I've been doing it. I
Okay.
had a guy, Jeff Cosgrove. He's a writer, writes for magazines, and he plays drum. So he wanted to get some. So I've been giving him lessons online,
Well, that's fantastic, man.
sending the lessons, and he sends back. We kind of got slowed up a little bit because I did the record, but yeah, that was yeah. People are doing that. They're teaching online.
Yeah. Yeah. I had Billy Cobham, the drummer. He was on the show. He lives in Switzerland.
Yeah, I
And
know.
I've had many of the drummers on. I've had him, Lenny White on, of course, your friend Dennis Chambers, Dave Weckl, Steve Gadd, and a lot of the guys are doing that same thing. Yeah, it's something, man. The times in which we're living. But listen, I want to thank you so much for being on Jazz Talk today, man. You're a treasure. I love you, man. Your music. And for those who are watching this interview, please look at ondimusiclive.com and check the dates. Mr. Joe Chambers will be performing there in October, and I know I'll be there.
I'll give you. Can you play this again on? I'll give you the date once I get it.
Oh, most definitely, most definitely. And this interview can be on your site as well, so people will be able to look at. But I have quite a few people on YouTube on my channel who subscribe to my channel who will check this out, Jazz Talk. Well, I want to thank you very much.
You're saying this will be on
It'll be
YouTube?
on YouTube as well. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hang on, I'm about to close out the show. Well, you've heard it from the great Joe Chambers. And as the saying goes, if the music grooves and makes you move, it must be jazz. I'm Preston Williams with Jazz Talk signing off. Peace.